Hello and welcome to ABP Live. I have with me today the Deputy Speaker of the Tibetan Parliament-in-Exile, Ms. Dolma Tsering Teykhang. Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for talking to ABP Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. We are here in Macloydganj Dharamshala to speak about and understand how the Tibetan Parliament in Exile is actually working for the cause of Tibet and for having, in future, an autonomous Tibet. So, ma'am, my first question to you will be, what is the condition in Tibet right now? We know very less news is coming out from there, and we know that there is a lot of oppression going on, is what we are hearing. Can you give us a clearer picture?
The Tibet at present is going through its darkest period of history. Tibet has become the biggest prison for the Tibetans, whereas the Chinese people are free to roam about in Tibet. For a Tibetan from Kham and Amdo to come to Lhasa and pay obedience to different monasteries and all, they have to have multiple recommendations from the Chinese officers and should have witness from the Lhasa Tibetan who can witness their safety. So I would say that the situation has become bad to worse to the extent that Tibet is going through eminent cultural genocide and annihilation of the Tibetan identity.
Well, my next question to you will be to understand how do you see the world is viewing the cause of Tibet? Because right now there is a war going on between Russia and Ukraine. There are several other issues going on with terrorism and all. Do you think the world is paying less attention to Tibet?
I think I always say that world is giving a stepmotherly treatment to the cause of Tibet because we are non-violent and we are compassionate towards the regime, towards our counterpart. Therefore, I always say that if you do violence, be it terrorism or be it transnational war or anything, you get a lot of coverage on the international media and the social media everywhere. But when it comes to the non-violent resistance, to the non-violence and compassionate way of calling for a dialogue, we find very little support from the international community, from the international countries, from the international NGOs. So we feel that it's very sad. When we talk about prevailing peace on earth, how can you neglect peace and non-violence and compassionate advocacy? So I appeal through your channel that if you want a world to be a peaceful place to live, for all to have a say in their own undertaking, I think world must acknowledge the non-violence resistance of Tibet.
So now my last question to you will be, I know a lot of work is happening at the Tibetan Parliament. I believe you are also discussing a new charter, which is your constitution. How do you see and do you feel that your new charter or the constitution should be more relevant to the next generation? Will they also follow the Tibetan cause so much passionately and that too in a non-violent manner?
I have no doubt about it. Because this form of governance, that is the democratic way of doing things, out of which the Tibetan Parliament has come through, it's a system whereby we learn how to govern ourselves through accountability and transparency. We feel that His Holiness always mentioned that by learning the way of doing democracy in exile, we are going to take this as the biggest gift to the Tibetan brothers and sisters who are suffering under authoritarian regime. So in Tibetan Parliament, we not only deliberate on the well-being of Tibetans in exile, we also are working towards the advocacy of Tibetan cause at the international level. We have Parliament in Central Tibetan administration. At the ground level, we have 38 local assemblies wherever Tibetan diaspora existed. So through them, to the international and to the Indian citizens, we are trying to reach out to talk and make sense of how the question of Tibet is important to the Indians and how the non-violent form of I should say resistance, a non-violent form of coming in terms with staying in with China is important for the world over if you want peace and a compassionate society.
And since you said this, ma'am, just to close, what is the reaction you are getting with the work that you are doing from the Chinese? Do you get to hear from the Chinese government any sort of threats, or is it giving them strong signals? What is it?
China always looks us. They look what we are doing because many a times the Central Tibetan Administration's website are being hacked. Even when in 2008, when there was a mass scale of protest in Tibet, we had a solidarity committee. I was in the core group, and all 7 core group members' emails were hacked, and we couldn't trace it back. So you see, China is always watching us. But we are not getting any positive signal because since 2010, we never had any dialogue with the counterpart. I think for the Chinese, it's very important to understand that within the lifetime of His Holiness, if they are willing and if they have the sincerity, they must come across the round table and solve the conflict of Tibet and China.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for speaking to ABP Live. So that was Ms. Dolma Teykhang. She's the Deputy Speaker of the Tibetan Parliament-in-Exile. You are watching ABP Live. This is Nayanima, Basu.